Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mangs, and it seems that we're on a bit of a Tellius marathon as of late. After winning the second Choose My Legend contests and becoming my banner girl of 2019, it is finally time to take a look at the first light magic wielding lord in the series. A girl that is either adored or despised by the fanbase depending on where you look. Today, we take a look at the Priestess of Light, Micaiah. Micaiah is a woman who grew up in Daein. Due to her branded heritage, her exact age is unknown, but she has the appearance of a girl in her mid-teens. Her brand shows us that she is half Heron, and is actually a distant relative of Leron, better known as Sephiron in the Tellius games. She is also the older sister of Sanaki. Blessed with the ability to hear the voice of the goddess, Micaiah is actually the true apostle of Begnion. However, for most of her life, Micaiah was unaware of her true ancestry, only knowing of her brand and its meaning. Micaiah grew up without her parents, and was instead raised by a mysterious figure she only refers to in the game as the Old Woman. This person most likely taught Micaiah how to wield light magic, and we can speculate that she might have been a shaman or soothsayer of some kind. She also knew about the origins of Micaiah's brand and urged her to keep it a secret from the public. Tellius society has always been very harsh on branded people, treating them with scorn and contempt due to the societal taboo of Bjork and Legoose mating. Despite growing up poor and alone on the streets of Daein, Micaiah was a kind and compassionate soul, and would often help people in need. Her branded heritage bestowed upon her many supernatural gifts, such as being able to predict the future and healing others by touching them, although the latter power would also drain her own strength, making it very dangerous to use. One day, Micaiah encountered a boy on the streets, a lone orphan, starving and alone. The child acted more animal than human, and was scared of her at first, but after she reached out her hand, he approached her. This boy was Sothe, and ever since that day, he followed her around everywhere. The two would form a very strong bond, and as Sothe grew older, he became her protector, looking after her on the streets. Eventually, Micaiah figured that the brand would get Sothe in trouble. Seeing as she aged more slowly than everyone else around her, it was only a matter of time until people started discovering her true nature. She had to keep moving around constantly out of fear of being discovered. Afraid that Sothe would suffer in her presence, she decided that she had to leave him. While they were both going on a ship headed for Crimea, Micaiah instead jumped on another ship destined for Begnion, leaving Sothe behind. This is where Sothe ended up meeting Ike and the Grail mercenaries in Path of Radiance. While in Begnion, Micaiah learned that war had broken out between Daein and Crimea, and regretted her decision to leave Sothe alone. Not long after, she traveled back to Crimea to look for him, but couldn't find him anywhere, so she returned to Daein to look for him there instead. After the Mad King's War, she finally reunited with Sothe on the streets of Daein, and the two became inseparable afterwards. Sometime later, Micaiah would form a vigilante group to challenge the military might of Begnion left in charge to hold the city after Ike's invasion. This group would later become known as the Dawn Brigade, and they became a symbol of hope among Daein citizens, standing up to the tyrannical reign of the Begnion occupation forces. The Dawn Brigade mostly relied on hit-and-run tactics, fighting a guerrilla war in the streets against Begnion, but as they grew in strength, adding more soldiers day by day, they eventually grew strong enough to become a real rebel army. After joining up with Prince Ashnard's long-lost son, Peleus, Micaiah fought to reinstate him as Daein's new king, and return sovereignty to her nation. At some point, Micaiah was almost killed by Jared, leader of the Begnion occupation forces, when she wandered off from the protection of her soldiers, but was saved in the last moment when the Black Knight warped in to protect her. Returning from the grave, he had come back to help restore his homeland and joined the Dawn Brigade in their fights. With such a powerful ally on their side, they turned the battle against Jared, taking the capital of Nevasa and reclaiming Daein's sovereignty. Shortly after, Peleus was crowned king, and Micaiah was appointed his vice commander. Shortly after Daein began its restoration, they were forced into conflict once more, as Begnion coerced Peleus to aid them in their war against the Legoose alliance by using a blood contract that Peleus had unwittingly signed years before. Failing to comply with this contract would result in Daein slowly having its citizens killed, so Peleus had no choice but to order Daein into the war, and ask Micaiah to lead them. This massive war that engulfed nearly all of Tellius would result in the goddess Ashura awakening from her slumber to cast her judgment over its people, turning nearly everyone involved to stone. Micaiah and a group of heroes, however, were spared the judgment due to the protection of Yune, the other half of Ashura. Yune vowed to restore the petrification and turn the statues back to normal, but she couldn't do it herself, so she instead possessed Micaiah's body, speaking through her, guiding the heroes towards Ashura's tower. Once inside the tower, Micaiah let Yune bless her companions with her power, allowing them to go up against the goddess of order. While it was Ike who struck the final blow against Ashura, it was Yune possessing Micaiah who empowered his attack, letting the blow defeat the goddess, restoring the judgment and saving the world. After the events of Radiant Dawn, Micaiah ascends the throne of Daein and becomes the 15th queen of the nation, ushering in an era of peace and prosperity. If Peleus is left alive at the end of the game, on a second playthrough, the events doesn't change much. It just states that Micaiah becomes queen at Peleus' behests, implying that he himself steps down as king as he learned of his true heritage. Since Micaiah is a Radiant Dawn exclusive character in a game that doesn't feature traditional support conversations, we only have the main story to analyze her by. Luckily, being one of the main characters, she has a lot of screen time, but that still doesn't stop people from classifying her as a boring, bland Mary Sue type character. In this segment, we'll be looking a little bit more into Micaiah's personality, and then attempt to analyze if she truly can be classified as a Mary Sue, since that's a discussion that's been going on for many years in the Fire Emblem community. At first glance, Micaiah is an incredibly compassionate, kind, and caring individual. She is also extremely selfless, being more than willing to sacrifice herself, no pun intended, for others. Like when she puts herself at risk to heal the wounded kid in the streets of Daein. Sometimes, however, her compassion borders on foolishness, such as when she decides to spare Jared's life instead of just letting the Black Knight kill him. Sometimes, Micaiah just comes off as an extremely naive individual, while other times, she seems to have great wisdom and insights, which is a bit of an odd inconsistency in her personality. One thing that is very obvious about Micaiah is that she has a deep and unquestionable loyalty and love for her country. She keeps fighting against the joint forces of the Laguz Alliance and the Grail Mercenaries in a war she does not believe in, merely to keep the citizens of Daein safe from the curse of the Blood Contract, showing great resolve and conviction in trying times. Almost everything Micaiah does, she does for her country, making her one of the more patriotic characters in the Tellius universe. Micaiah also has occasional moments of sassiness to her, like when she calls Ike the father of Sothe's children due to Sothe's constant idolization of the mercenary.
Right. Lord Ike, hero of the Crimean liberation, leader of the Grail mercenaries, and father of Sothe's children.
This shows a glimmer of humor and sarcasm that actually makes Micaiah come across as very likable, but sadly these moments are so few and far between, it's very easy to forget that they are even there. Micaiah's powers of foresight is a plot device that often take away from her choices. On more than one occasion in the story, Micaiah does things not because she thinks it's a smart thing to do, but merely because the visions told her to do it. Having the powers of foresight is often used as a way to move the plot forward without requiring much explanation. I wouldn't say this is the fault of Micaiah as a character, but more towards the general writing of Radiant Dawn for including such a device. So to shortly summarize Micaiah as a character, she's kind, compassionate, ridiculously selfless, patriotic, a little naive, and occasionally a little sassy. So why is it that she's constantly referred to as a Mary Sue? Well, the only way to find out is to look up what defines such a character. A Mary Sue type character is beautiful, yet plain, talented or possessing a special gift, destined in the story, without flaws, loved by all, and without struggle. Let's go through each of these and see if they apply to Micaiah. Beautiful yet plain is an easy one. Micaiah is definitely depicted as an attractive woman, yet she's still simple and elegant without being over the top. Her golden eyes and silvery hair also make her look beautiful in a unique way, which is very atypical for a Mary Sue. The second one, talented or possessing a special gift, is also easy, as Micaiah literally has special powers of foresight and healing thanks to her heritage. No questions asked here, another box checked. The third one, destined in the story, is also an easy one. Micaiah is the rightful apostle of Begnion by birthright, and the only one capable of speaking to the goddess Yune. If it wasn't for Micaiah, the heroes would have no way of opposing Ashura's judgment, so I'd say this is another check of the Mary Sue lists. Without flaws is the first point that's not just an easy yes. A lot of people will argue against this one, seeing as Micaiah is horrendously weak in the game itself. Even in the story, she relies on characters like Sothe and the Black Knight to protect her from harm. However, being physically weak isn't necessarily a character flaw, and despite her stats being awful, they never hinder her from doing the things she wants to accomplish in the story. If Micaiah does have flaws, it might be that she's either too compassionate or too naive, such as when she lets Jared go, when it's obviously a terrible idea to do so. Usually, Mary Sue type characters have flaws that aren't really consequential, such as being too kind, and Micaiah definitely falls a little bit into this category, but I'm going to pass on this one, as she does make mistakes throughout the course of the game, and thus saying that she is entirely without flaws is a little bit of a reach. Loved by all is definitely another easy one though. Everyone flocks to Micaiah like she is the most precious commodity on Tellius. The Dawn Brigade literally treats her as the symbol of Daein's restoration, and among the citizens of Daein, she has attained godlike status. The Black Knight, a character that was previously pure evil in Path of Radiance, goes out of his way to protect her like she is the most precious thing in the world. And Sothe gets mad because he wants the exclusive job of protecting Micaiah, and the two of them literally argue and bicker over who gets to protect the Whammon the most. Everyone loves Micaiah, even most of the game's villains love Micaiah, which is extreme even by Marisu standards. Lastly, without struggle is definitely up for debates. Micaiah does face hardships in the story, such as being forced to fight for Daein under the oppression of a blood contract, but usually when Micaiah undergoes hardships, it's on behalf of other people, and seldom her own. To contrast this, we can take Ike as an example. His personal vendetta against the Black Knight is very much his own struggle, when he has to face all by himself, and one that relies solely on his own strength and growth. Now, it needs to be said that Micaiah is branded, and this usually makes you a huge target in Tellius society, but we never once see Micaiah actually suffer due to her branded heritage. Sure, she was forced to leave Sothe over it, or she made the choice to do so, afraid that it might hurt him, and that is definitely something that caused her a lot of pain, but unlike Selgius, who underwent so much abuse from his own family that he had to join the army to escape them, or Soren, who literally had to live as an animal on the street because of it, we don't ever actually see Micaiah getting shouted down by an angry mob or being otherwise harassed over her brand. In fact, we see quite the opposite. Most everyone who knows about her seems to love her, despite her weird powers. Again, this is a tough one, because saying Micaiah doesn't suffer hardships isn't true. It really is up for debate, so I'm leaving this one blank. And so my conclusion on Micaiah being a Marisu character is, yeah, probably, at least somewhat. She checks at least 4 out of the 6 boxes, and there are strong arguments for her checking the remaining 2 as well. Though I'm not going to spend a lot more time on this, so I'm going to ask you guys. Is Micaiah your traditional Marisu type character, or does she not deserve that label? Let me know your arguments for and against this in the comment section below. Micaiah came in at 9th place among the female characters in the first Heroes Choose Your Legends popularity poll with 13,491 votes. Then at 8th place in the second poll with 15,493 votes, and then lastly, she came in at 1st place in the third poll with 54,343 votes. Micaiah's eyes are golden, but they change color to red whenever Yune speaks through her. Micaiah has the 2nd highest resistance growth of any playable character in the Fire Emblem games to date at 90%, only surpassed by Binding Blade's Karel. Micaiah is one of the few characters who can obtain 2 different SS weapon ranks in Radiant Dawn, both in Light Magic and Staves. Micaiah is the first female Lord character in Fire Emblem to become the leader of her own kingdom. Being one of the main lords of Radiant Dawn, Micaiah is an important character for many reasons. She's force deployed in most maps she's in, and losing her will result in a game over. Being the first light magic lord in the series certainly makes her unique, but sadly her actual combat performance is not that great. One glance at Micaiah's bases reveals to the player that she's made out of tinfoil paper, or in the words of Mr. Antenen, saying that would be an insult to tinfoil. 15 hit points and 2 defense means she gets killed by pretty much everything, meaning you can never place Micaiah in the enemy's range, as her avoid just isn't good enough to rely on. Micaiah's survivability will be a prevailing issue throughout Radiant Dawn. While she may grow to survive 1 hit, she will rarely ever survive 2. She can be a nice magical wall, but most enemies in Radiant Dawn are physical ones, and most magic enemies will simply ignore Micaiah and just go for one of your other physical units instead, meaning her resistance doesn't really do a whole lot for her. Micaiah's combined growth rates are very high, however, they are extremely lopsided. She has an absurdly good magic, luck, and resistance growth, but all her other growth rates are plain awful. Her survivability will hardly improve on its own without the assistance of stat boosters, and on top of being incredibly physically frail, she's also really slow. You might just have to deal with the fact that even a blessed Micaiah will never double enemies. If you're lucky, she might grow enough to avoid being doubled herself, but even that is not something you can rely on, particularly when you play on hard mode. Micaiah comes with a unique ability, Sacrifice. Instead of attacking, she can transfer her own health over to an ally, restoring status effects and also gaining 10 experience in the process. She'll transfer as much health as she needs to fully heal the character, or until she has no more health left to give. She cannot kill herself by doing this, but if she's on 1 HP, she can't activate Sacrifice. Since Micaiah is often one-shot by most enemies in Act 1, it makes little difference if she's on full or low health. You can therefore use this ability to give her some free experience, but honestly, levels on Micaiah do very little to affect her performance in any meaningful way. If you're lucky with her HP and defense growths, you might get her to a point where she doesn't get one-shot by everything, but for the most part, you shouldn't worry too much about sacrifice spamming unless you really enjoy min-maxing. Starting from chapter 3 and onwards, Micaiah will obtain a unique tome from a chest in the lower right corner called Thaini that only she can use. Think of Thaini as a rapier in light tome form. It's effective against armor knights and cavalry, but unlike the rapier, it has 1-2 range and a good amount of might on it, and targets resistance as opposed to defense, making it much better, since that's a stat cavaliers and armor knight tends to not have a lot of. At the end of Act 1, Micaiah will promote to her 2nd tier class, allowing her to use staves. From this moment on, she will probably not attack much unless you go out of your way to do so. The Dawn Brigade is always in need of healing, and Laura can only be in one place at once, so Micaiah is most likely going to be delegated to staff duty for the duration of Act 3, especially since you will be fighting mostly Lagoose, and there aren't going to be many armor knights or cavaliers for her to Thaini bomb. Her sacrifice ability also becomes pretty much outdated as she can merely wield the restore staff instead, which yields more experience and doesn't drain her own health when used. Even after her 3rd tier promotion in the endgame, Micaiah still pretty much remains in the background as a supporting unit. It's not that she can't fight, but her low speed cap of 33 means that even if you do somehow get a speed blessed Micaiah in the tower, she still can't double anything meaningful. She might be able to fanny bomb some of the generals on the 1st floor, but after that she doesn't really contribute much in that regard. In my Radiant Dawn Let's Play, my Micaiah capped nearly every single stat in the tower, and she still did next to no attacking. Magic is just incredibly weak in Radiant Dawn, light magic even more so. It's not that Micaiah can't do damage, it's just that most of the time it's more valuable to use her to heal someone. Overall, I'd say that Micaiah suffers from the same curse as a lot of other Radiant Dawn characters, that she simply gets outpaced by the game and outclassed by some of the titans that join later on, such as Ike and the Lagoose Royals. Some people enjoy making Micaiah as good as she possibly can be, and she can be a fun project in that regard. I know I certainly did that in my Radiant Dawn Let's Play, but in the end she's just nothing special, which is a shame because her character concept is really cool, but just fails to stand out in any meaningful way. Still, she can contribute as a good supporting character, wielding staves and clearing status. You just need to take very good care of her, but I think that might be what makes her such a fan favorite. I think at the end of the day, we enjoy watching over and protecting our waifus. In this spotlight, I've gone into a lot of detail talking about Micaiah's personality and analyzing whether she is a Mary Sue type character or not. My conclusion on Micaiah's character is that she isn't as bland and one-dimensional as the fandom wants her to be, but she isn't exactly an overly complex and multi-layered character either. She shows some glimpses of her sassy side at certain parts of the story, but these moments are very few and far in between. There are certainly things to discover about Micaiah if you know where to look, but it doesn't present itself very well to most players on their first couple of playthroughs through Radiant Dawn. For this reason, I rate Micaiah's character a 3 out of 5 stars. Micaiah may just be one of my favorite female designs in all of Fire Emblem. When both me and Mecha unanimously agree on something related to a woman, you know the people behind her character design did a good job. She's gorgeous without being over the top, pretty without being fanservice-y, and classy while still being gorgeous. Her unique attire, silver hair and golden eyes give her a very special look that is extremely memorable. She probably has the best design of any lord in the series, maybe with the exception of Edelgard, who is most likely directly inspired by Micaiah. 5 out of 5 stars. Micaiah is one of those characters that I think gets a lot of crap from the fandom for being horrible. I know some people who would straight up rate her as a 1-star unit because of her inability to take hits, but while Micaiah certainly is far from being a good unit, I feel like some people go overboard when ranting about her. Yes, she is frail, but she also has 1-2 range, staff utility post-promotion, and the ability to generate her own experience with her special ability. Yes, it sucks that she can't stay on the front lines for shit, but this goes for so many other characters as well. Nearly the entire Dawn Brigade, except for maybe a few key players, are made of glass. It's not something unique to Micaiah. For this reason, I think Micaiah is actually a somewhat decent character, although she's far from being good. But I'd say 3 out of 5 stars is a fair rating to give her. Thank you so much for watching this character spotlights. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, remember to leave an like and a comment to support it, and let me know who you want to see me cover in a future episode. Also, if you would like to click the notification bell, you will be notified whenever a new video is released. This really helps out my channel, so I really appreciate it. This spotlight was edited by my designer Cyan, and my script editors also helped me fine-tune the script for the spotlight. You can check out their social media and other platforms along with any sources used in the spotlight by clicking the video description of this video. I'd like to finish the spotlight by thanking my amazing Patreon supporters. Your support means a lot to me and is the reason I can do this every day without having to rely on YouTube's instability. There are many tiers you can join with various rewards, and by becoming a silver tier Patreon, you can even request your very own character spotlight. Check the link in the video description or at the end of this video for more information. If you have issues with Patreon for whatever reason, you can support my channel directly by clicking the join button in the lower right corner of the video. This grants you a cool icon next to your name as well as access to unique emotes. Regardless of what happens though, all my content will always remain 100% free, and supporting me is completely optional, but very appreciated. Anyway guys, if you want to see more spotlights, click on the playlist linked in front of you, or check out the previous spotlight I've done. Thanks for watching all the way to the end, you are a true fan. Until next time, my name is Mangs, goodbye.